Ever feel like you are known for something, but that is not what you want to be known for? That is the case with Leonardo da Vinci. I know many of you have seen bridges or perhaps helicopters on armored cars that you may have seen outside of a store or outside of a bank. Clocks, I know many of you would have that in your home or on your bodies. The symbol for fitness of what an ideal man should look like, which is the Vitruvian man that you see here, and or perhaps a boat or a machine gun. Most of you know famous paintings by Leonardo da Vinci, such as the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper. Do you know he invented all the things I listed above? That is not even all the inventions he pioneered. Paintings and sculptures are not what he wanted to be known for. Even I thought that at one point until I pursued an art major. I would like to share a glimpse of who Leonardo da Vinci and what contributions he made in our world. We still use until today. Leonardo da Vinci is not just a famous painter or a famous sculptor. He was vastly way more than that. To fully explain who Leonardo da Vinci is and why he was so way ahead of his time, we'll need to break it down to three parts. One, origin of Leonardo da Vinci. Two, inventions by Leonardo da Vinci. And finally, the era that he invented these inventions and his famous quotes. Walter Isaacson, author, journalist, and professor, explained in detail in Leonardo da Vinci, published in 2017, that Leonardo da Vinci was born out of wedlock to Sir Piero Vinci, who had an affair with an unmarried peasant girl, who gave birth to Leonardo da Vinci on April 15th, 1452, a fellow Aries, in the village of Vinci in Florence, Italy. He did not go to Latin schools. He taught himself mostly other than the abacus school. He lived with his grandfather, and his grandfather died when he was just 12 years old. Coincidentally, his stepmother died as well while giving birth to her firstborn. He learned trade while he was living with his father. And because he was living with his father brought him home to Florence because he was lonely at that time, after his wife passed. He learned trade skills when he had to live with him, and he attained basic education from that moment. Bulent Attalay and Keith Wamsley, Leonardo da Vinci Celebrating the Renaissance Man, published by National Geographic Partners, LLC in 2019, wrote, at age 15, Leonardo da Vinci studied apprenticeship with Andrea Verrocchio. Here, for a few years, he studied with them. And often at this time period, most of the pieces that the masters are working on, whether it's a sculpture, painting, or anything that they're doing as a project, oftentimes commissioned by people who are wealthy, have apprenticeships under their wing. And so Verrocchio had Leonardo, and at this point, he actually collaborated with Verrocchio on several of the paintings, so much so that halfway through the collaboration, some of the paintings that Leonardo was doing surpassed even thus of his master Verrocchio. And so from there, he grew notoriety around and word spread of his talents, and he ventured off on his own after Verrocchio. And also at this time period when he ventured off, Leonardo da Vinci had a companion. His name was Salai. He was Leonardo da Vinci was gay. Inventions by Leonardo da Vinci, unrelated to paintings or sculptures. Johannes Nathan and Frank Zollner. Leonardo da Vinci, 1452 to 1519. The graphic work published by Taskin GmbH 2017 shows the actual design Leonardo da Vinci made of an automobile. There were designs on irrigation channels, a hoist for a bell. There's some more engineering on study of a clock mechanism in there. There's designs for an oil press and an oil mill. There's even designs for hinges door hinges. And there's wooden armoring and rocket launching device designs in there, of total accounts of all the drawings of how he would make these inventions. He also had several different military and clothing machine designs. He had a odometer also that he designed in 1500, machine for manufacturing ropes, hydraulic devices. He even designed a keyboard instrument in 1494. Water fountains. He designed some of that in 1513. Siege machines with covered bridges. It was designed in 1480. Repulsing scaling ladders in 1480, and catapults in 1485. Cannons and military machine with 16 crossbows on it. That was pretty impressive, and he designed that at 1485. Giant crossbows, horsemen with 3 lances, um, and scythe chariot and armored cars, swiveling rope bridge, steam-fired cannons, shrapnel mortar, 2 mortars with explosive shells. He did that design in 1495 to 1499. A row of 4 mortars firing stones into the courtyard of a fort. That was pretty impressive, and that design was done in 1503 and 1504 that he created. He even created the flying machine, again, well ahead of his time. It was 1487 to 1490. And then he did a bronze cast mold of an equestrian, something that was never done before, and it's allowed him to make gigantic equestrian statues. But he did one. He had a commission, but he only got halfway on it because war um, was struck in Florence, and they had to use the rest of his materials to make cannons. So he couldn't finish that bronze cast sculpture. There is also details on hundreds pages of detailed studies on human anatomy and how each parts move. There are also hundreds of pictures of studies, detailed studies on animal anatomy and equestrian anatomy. He was really from an early age. He was into some morbid things. Um, Growing up, he was a curious soul, and because so, he gained a lot of knowledge in several different disciplines. So, like when he would be curious around him, he would take insects and take them apart. He would take animals and take them apart. But with the insects, he would join other parts from other insects to and graft it to another insect while they were dead, and he would draw those out and would create some of like the more morbid creatures and frightening to a lot of people, probably in that time as well, in that time period where most people don't think that way. And even now, I mean, if I saw that in front of me, I would probably think the same way too and get grossed out. But that's how he made his drawings, and some of the stuff that he created and inventions. He took apart things and or thought of how things you know were in relation to in example is human anatomy. He did the first dissection on a dead person. He got the approval from this old man, and this old man gave him the rights to dissect him after he died. And he learned how each part of the human body would move if he did something to it. And he would often make these observations and experiment that way. And he learned how to do our nervous system. He learned how to do how things flowed, like our blood, how it flowed. Also, he dissected a pregnant lady that died with a baby inside. So he was able to figure out how that the anatomy of a woman, from the inside out, uh, would work. And I think the reason why his mind was trained to do this, especially at his later age, was because his master Verrocchio, that he apprenticeship with, told him that in order to accurately depict something, you have to take it from the inside out, and take it apart, and muscle by muscle, and that's how you can accurately depict something. And oddly enough, he depicted anatomy way better than his own master can. He surpassed, like I said, he surpassed his master. And the era that he invented his great inventions, and that time was probably the most, the most for me, that Renaissance period is where a lot of people came out for, with the greatest inventions, or greatest, inventors came from that time period, from art to engineering to even, Aristotle came from that era. So it's a lot of the greats came out of that. And so I think for me, that era was the most inventive, and that we use, that that we actually use up until today. The inventions that came out from that era are used as a prototype for what we know today. And some of the work that he did, through his notebooks, a lot of them are not even deciphered, because that's how genius he was. And a lot of people think that he wrote, backwards, because um he was scared of the Catholic and what the Catholic was going to do to him. So he oftentimes, all of the stuff that he would write would be backwards. And so it's hard to decipher even for scholars. But the reason why he did that was because he at that time they used ink, and it was easier to write from left from backwards. And it was because it would get on his arm if he wrote conventionally, um like most people would write. So that's the reason why he wrote backwards, and you needed to use a mirror to figure out what he's trying to say. And so the era that he was inventing, that was a time period where the Catholics pretty much took hold of everybody. It was governed by, what they the scope of how they think people should live, how people should act, how people should depict art, how you should live your life, how to govern your household. I mean, even your businesses, they were into everybody's affairs in such an extreme way, to the point where if you don't consort or do not, go by their guidelines, you are easily, denoted as a bad person. Or some, like Leonardo da Vinci, some of his inventions are kind of out there. I mean, the flying saucers, is somebody in that era got a hold of some of his notebooks, they would deem him crazy, or perhaps evil, because a lot of that stuff wasn't thought of in that time period, and by plain minds. His mind was just so different from everybody. So that was a scary time. So when he was inventing, that stuff, oftentimes, when he would make his sculptures and his paintings, he had to do what the scope of the Catholic wanted. And oftentimes the sculptures at that time period, including Leonardo, when the Catholic Church would tell them to make changes on the sculpture or the painting, they would often have shavings from the stone sculptures that they're doing, and they have it in a pouch. So when they're tinkering, it looks like they're working on the nose or the face of the sculpture high up in a scaffolding, and you will see like droppings of those stone pieces, and that's because they were removing it off their pouch. It wasn't that they were doing the changes that the Catholics wanted them to do. They were just trying to mask, um, making it look and appear that they're working, but they're really not working on it because they refuse to make the changes. So it's hard to be an artist at that time when you're not even free to be the artist that you want to be. So a lot of the stuff, that's why he had hundreds and hundreds of pages of notebooks, and a lot of his notebooks are not even out there anymore. I mean, they are out there, but I mean, there's some that are lost because they were burned. They were confiscated and burned by the Catholic Church when they saw what he was up to, and some of them are scattered because a lot of the people that he mentored took those notebooks and went in hiding, with them. So now they're scattered all over the world, and the scholars are trying to figure these out now, and they can't. Not all of them, because it's just it way he wrote, and it's just so hard the way he composed it. So some of the famous quotes by Leonardo da Vinci that were my favorite quotes, and it's from www.leonardodavinci.net /quotes.jsp, the URL. There are three classes of people. This is what Leonardo da Vinci says on his quote. There are three classes of people: those who see when they are shown, and those who do not see. Another quote is, life is pretty simple. You do some stuff, most fails, some works. You do more of what works. If it works big, others quickly copy it. Then you do something else. The trick is the doing something else. And a third, it's easier to resist at the beginning than the end. That makes total sense. In conclusion, Leonardo da Vinci, as you can see, is not just a famous painter or a famous sculptor. He's vastly more than that, and he pioneered a lot of disciplines. For a lot of inventions for a lot of disciplines. For somebody who did not have education, as you can see, he has accomplished so much more than I can even express or the time allotted in one sitting. And maybe with his story, we can learn not to judge people by their own college education.